Commander Vale Trinak had never feared empty space. The void between stars was where he'd made his name, scouting, conquering, expanding the Zarthari Empire into regions others deemed barren. So when he received orders to investigate Sector 404, he didn't hesitate. A few scattered myths about a cursed system at the galaxy's edge didn't bother him. Myths didn't shoot plasma. Myths didn't fight back. He sat on the command throne of the ZSS Vengeance's site, eyes narrowed at the void ahead. His ship, sleek and silent, coasted on minimal emissions. No active scans. Passive sensors only. "Status?" he asked, voice clipped. Lieutenant Sorka, a younger officer with nervous frills on her throat, glanced at her display. "Crossing boundary into the unmarked sector now. All systems green." No response. "It's dead quiet." Vale grunted. "Just another unclaimed region. We'll find a few icy rocks, maybe an ancient wreck. Log it, and claim it in the name of the Emperor." But the deeper they drifted, the more wrong things began to feel. There was no stellar radiation. No particle drift. No gravimetric fluctuations. Just silence. It wasn't the silence of peace, it was the silence of a predator holding its breath. The crew grew more unsettled with every hour. Sensor pings returned garbled echoes. Shadows danced on the edge of the holomap. When Ensign Krell reported that the ship's long-range comms had stopped transmitting without triggering an alert, Vale ordered a full diagnostic. Then the lights dimmed. "Emergency power?" Vale barked. "No, Commander." Sorka's fingers flew across her console. "Primary systems are fine. This isn't a malfunction, it's a controlled power fluctuation." "Controlled by whom?" Vale growled. The answer came before she could speak. Every screen in the command deck flickered. Static. Then, one by one, they displayed a symbol, a blue circle with a horizontal slash, simple, unadorned, and utterly unfamiliar. A calm voice followed. "Unidentified vessel. You are trespassing in restricted space. Stand by." The voice spoke perfect Zarthari, with no trace of accent. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. A fact. The bridge went still. "Who the void are they?" Krell whispered. Before Vale could reply, the ship lurched. Not physically, but every artificial stabilizer dropped to zero. Gravity faltered, inertial dampeners flickered. The ship wasn't being attacked. It was being taken. They didn't see the Terran ship approach. No blip. No energy signature. No warning. Suddenly, the viewports showed a shape gliding alongside them, black on black, like something carved from space itself. Not massive. Not hulking. Just there. It resembled no known configuration of any species they'd encountered. Then the boarding signal came. A soft ping, followed by another transmission. "We are entering now. No resistance is necessary. You will not be harmed." Vale stood, claws clenched. "Seal the doors. Ready countermeasures. Prepare." "Commander," Sorka interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're already on board." She turned her console toward him. The internal cameras showed 6 figures in matte black armor moving through the corridors. Silent. Swift. Not shooting. Not scanning. Walking. And somehow, none of the motion sensors had triggered until they were inside. When the humans arrived on the bridge, they didn't storm it. The doors hissed open. No weapons raised. The leader stepped in first, a woman with short-cropped black hair, no visible weapons, and eyes like unlit coals. Her uniform bore no insignia, no flag. Just a name, Valen. "Commander Vale Trinek," she said evenly. "You've entered restricted Terran territory. We're not here to harm you." Vale stood tall, but something about her presence, it wasn't dominance through force. It was the absence of fear. That terrified him more than a drawn weapon. This is Zarthari space, he said sharply. Your kind are ghosts, if you even exist. We have every right to survey. You've been watched since you crossed the outer shell of Sector 404, Valen said, cutting him off. Every transmission, system, and physiological reading. We allowed your approach to study your intent. You allowed? Your ship was never in control. You're now in a holding orbit around a false planetoid $0.30 from Sol 7, what you would call an empty rock. She smiled faintly. It's not. Sorka visibly swallowed. Krell was shaking. Valen stepped forward, her tone soft. We have no quarrel with your people. But your empire's curiosity ends here. Vale glared. You expect us to flee with our tails tucked? She tilted her head. No. We expect you to deliver a message. They were escorted back to their ship, no weapons taken, no injuries dealt. Just a tracer silently implanted in their systems, invisible even to their diagnostics. The Terran ship detached and vanished into the black, disappearing faster than their sensors could even register the direction. The lights returned. The ship's systems unlocked. You are free to go. Do not return. They did return. Not physically, but through analysis, debrief, and command meetings back on Zarthari Prime. Vale stood before High Strategist Jackson Var, trying to summarize something he didn't fully understand. They were everywhere and nowhere, he said, jaw tight. They knew our codes. Spoke our language. Their technology isn't ahead by generations, it's sideways. Different. They didn't disable us through force, they did it like someone folding a paper. And they let you go? Jackson sneered. Yes. And that doesn't strike you as cowardice? No, Vale said slowly. It strikes me as certainty. Back in orbit over Earth, Captain Valen entered the debriefing room of the Terran Defense Council. Around the table sat military leaders, cybernetic interfaces, and one flesh and blood historian, Elia Rowe. They've taken the bait, Valen reported. Left with fear and confusion. Enough to stir their pride. Will they return? Asked the defense secretary. Rowe smiled softly. Of course they will. Empires always do. And what will they find? Valen asked. The lights dimmed slightly as the AI Miriam answered through a nearby panel. They will find what we've always offered, the opportunity to leave quietly. Or the lesson they deserve. Laughter broke the tension, but it was cold. It wasn't joy. It was memory. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Valen stood alone, watching the stars. Miriam's voice returned, this time soft. Do you think they'll understand? No, Valen said. But they will remember. Behind her, a hologram flickered, one of the ancient, floating wrecks that still ring the edges of human space. Each one marked a name. Each one a warning. And the Zarthari had just become the next entry on the list. High Strategist Jackson Var was not a man given to doubt. His faith in the Zarthari Empire was unwavering, as was his contempt for what he called subgalactic species, primitives, anomalies, or worse, inconvenient mysteries like humanity. He watched the footage from Vale's mission for the 12th time. The humans had done nothing overtly aggressive. They had made no threats. No demands. And yet, the entire bridge crew of one of the Empire's most capable recon ships had returned visibly shaken, like children returning from a haunted temple. Unacceptable. Jackson stood in the center of the Imperial War Command, flanked by senior tacticians, analysts, and emissaries. Before him hovered a star map of human space, known colloquially among Zarthari soldiers as the Burn Zone. Because anyone who went in never came out the same. It's an illusion, Jackson said coldly. Psychological warfare. Low-level technopathy. Their tricks are impressive, but they are still just tricks. We are Zarthari. And no upstart species will deny us access to any region of space. He jabbed a clawed finger toward the map. Operation Dawnspear begins immediately. We will send a flotilla, 12 ships, multi-role composition. One of each class, led by our most advanced command carrier, the Intractable Will. Their silence has served as cover for too long. We'll show them the Empire doesn't fear ghosts. Aboard the Intractable Will. Captain Torm Nex, a rigid old warrior with cybernetic implants covering half his face, had been handpicked to lead the mission. The crew of the Intractable Will were veterans of 5 planetary suppression campaigns. They had raised colonies, suppressed revolts, and turned mineral-rich moons into ash when diplomacy failed. They did not expect resistance from these so-called Terrans. What they expected, and what they received, were not the same. 12 ships slipped past the warning boundary of Sector 404, this time on full combat alert. No stealth. No subtlety. A declaration of force. And for several hours, it seemed to work. No human ship intercepted them. No communications came. Even the eerie sensor dampening was weaker, less aggressive. Scared, Torm muttered, his steel eye gleaming. That first contact was just a ploy. They never expected us to respond with strength. That was when the starfield changed. Literally. Dozens of ships appeared in a sudden ripple, decloaking as though reality itself had forgotten to render them a moment earlier. They didn't radiate power signatures. They didn't warm space with reactor heat. They were cold. Silent. Watching. Hundreds of Terran vessels, sleek, compact, strange geometries, hung in the dark. No weapons aimed. No movement. Just presence. A moment later, every Zarthari ship received a single transmission. Final warning, return. You have not yet crossed the line of no return. Torm sneered. They outnumber us nearly 10 to 1. Shall we retreat? Asked his adjutant. No. We fire. The skirmish that wasn't. The Intractable Will launched a full salvo. Beam lances. Grav warheads. Directed fusion bursts. The Terran ships made no attempt to dodge. Every shot missed. No, worse than missed, they phased through their targets as if striking ghosts. They're using multi-spectrum jamming, shouted the sensor chief. No, Commander, said one of the junior tacticians in horror, our sensors are seeing 2 locations for each target simultaneously. They're decoding the probabilities. What does that mean? Barked Torm. It means they exist in multiple states until they decide not to, the tactician replied, voice barely audible. I think they're choosing when to be real. Then the Terran ships moved. Not toward the fleet, but through it. Human ships passed silently, threading the Zarthari formation like needles through fabric. No ramming. No impact. But systems began shutting down. Lights flickered. Weapons powered down. Artificial gravity destabilized. And everywhere, the fear returned. Torm ordered emergency retreat. Half the ships complied. The other half didn't move. They simply hung in space, motionless, unpowered, their crews staring blankly at control consoles that refused to respond. Meanwhile, on Earth. Back on Terra, in a massive underground complex beneath the Andes, Captain Valen watched the entire encounter unfold in real time. Elia Rowe, the historian, sipped her tea next to her. They fired first. Valen didn't respond. They always fire first, Elia continued softly. Even after we gave them a chance. Even after we made it clear that their understanding of power doesn't apply to us. They'll escalate again, Valen said. You know that. Yes. But the more force they bring, the more of their people see that it doesn't matter. And that's how empires die, not when their armies are defeated, but when their soldiers lose faith in the invincibility they were promised. In the aftermath, Captain Torm returned to Zarthari space with only 5 ships intact. All 5 were physically untouched. But the crews were another matter. Dozens of soldiers were catatonic. Others suffered from paradoxical memory syndromes, remembering events in 3 conflicting sequences. Some experienced time differently entirely. One soldier insisted she had spoken with a human captain for 5 hours, though the mission log showed only 22 minutes had passed. When Torm delivered his report to High Strategist Jackson, he could barely form sentences. "They didn't fight us," he said. "They undid us." Jackson dismissed the claims as trauma-induced exaggeration until he received a package. Not through any known channel. It simply appeared on his desk. Inside was a data chip, containing the audio logs of one of his elite captains, a woman named Relk, a message spoken clearly, calmly, and with chilling finality. "They never killed us. They just made us understand. One moment, I was ready to fire, the next, I realized we were the monsters. And they pitted us." Cultural clash. The Zarthari Empire was built on dominance, hierarchy, and projection of power. Their fleets had never been defeated. Their strategies, based on overwhelming force and psychological supremacy, had crushed every foe. But humanity was different. Not because they were stronger. Not because they were smarter. Because they had seen the abyss, and adapted. Humanity had survived its own extinction, built its unity from chaos, and expanded inward before expanding outward. The first humans in space weren't conquerors, they were survivors. And when they finally reached the stars, they didn't seek to rule. They built a fortress of silence around themselves. A fortress that asked nothing. A fortress that warned gently. A fortress that could not be breached, because it didn't fight fair. It didn't need to. The Terran philosophy. Elia Rose summarized it best when she spoke before the Terran Defense Council later that week. "We are not gods. We are not monsters. We are the story that begins when all others end." The Zarthari believed power was dominance. We showed them that true power is restraint. Captain Valen, watching the data from Operation Dawnspear, nodded slowly. "They'll try again," she said. "They always try again." Elia smiled gently. "Let them. We're not trying to stop them. We're just trying to give them the chance, not to be us." The Zarthari Empire's pride was in ruins. Public confidence waned. Whispers spread through the military caste: "The humans don't fight, they erase." The Emperor's inner circle demanded answers, not rumors. Some cried for war. Others for diplomacy. But one faction proposed something bolder. Infiltration. If Terran strength couldn't be matched on the battlefield, then it must come from technology, information, or arcane tactics. Perhaps even lies. Either way, understanding was now more valuable than conquest. Thus began Operation Ghost Sight. The mission briefing. High Strategist Jackson Var, now visibly fraying at the edges, stood before 6 of the Empire's most elite covert operatives, members of the Silent Talon, a unit trained in espionage, psychological mimicry, and neural camouflage. "You are not soldiers," Jackson said, pacing. "You are ghosts. You are minds without borders. You will infiltrate human space, locate their command infrastructure, and extract whatever secret allows them to defeat us without ever firing a shot." He tapped a holomap. "Your entry vector will be through the Heliox Drift, an anomaly field previously believed impassable. New scans suggest the Terrans maintain no presence there." He smiled darkly. "They don't expect intruders from behind. That was mistake number 1. Insertion into human space." The Talon's infiltration craft, Veil's Edge, was an engineering marvel, coated in adaptive alloys and quantum-blind composite. Even Terran sensors, it was claimed, wouldn't see it coming. For days, the ship coasted silently through the Heliox Drift, dodging spatial distortions and gravitational eddies. One operative, Soren Valkesh, took particular pride in how easily they bypassed what Zarthari intelligence labeled the soft underbelly of human space. "It's like they never anticipated a flank," he chuckled. Then the stars changed. Not in position. In color. Subtle. Just enough that the crew noticed. "Why are the constellations off?" asked Operative Lorraine. "We may have passed through a folded region," offered their pilot. Time dilation, maybe. We'll recalibrate. But recalibration didn't work. That was mistake number 2. The Museum of the Forgotten. After days of silent navigation, the Veil's Edge finally located an object, a large space station buried in the shadow of a dying star, barely powered, with no transponder signal. It looked abandoned. Scarred. Ancient. Perfect. The operatives docked with practiced precision, their suits cloaking them from infrared and EM detection. They entered the derelict station weapons hot, but what they found was not war. It was memory. The walls were covered in names, etched into metal, digitally projected in old Terran script, some burned in carbon. Human names. Thousands of them. Dates followed each one. Some names had accompanying hollow images, tired soldiers, smiling scientists, crying children. "This is a shrine," whispered Lorraine. "No," said Soren. "It's a warning." They continued deeper. The station was filled with exhibits, not functional tech, but simulations and journals. Holographic replays of Earth's darkest moments, the last continental war, the global climate collapse, the AI uprising, the Martian plague, and finally, the event humans simply called the Silence. Each simulation included full sensory playback. The Talon agents tried to ignore the emotional pull, training required it, but even for them, the experiences were devastating. "This isn't weakness," muttered Soren. "This is what they survived." And that was realization number 1. They know you're here. The crew decided to pull only limited data before departing. The station was too strange, too open. It wanted to be found. They transmitted a low-level data burst back towards Zarthari space via tight beam, expecting no interference. The moment the pulse ended, the lights in the station turned on. All of them. The holoscreens blinked. A single line of text appeared. "You shouldn't be here." Then a voice spoke. Not angry. Not hostile. Just tired. "Zarthari operatives. We've allowed you to come this far so you can understand. But you still choose to take, not listen." The team froze. "You're in a monument. To what we endured. You came seeking a weapon. Here it is." Panels slid open around them. Not turrets. Not traps. Stories. Recordings of humans in despair. Parents holding children during bombardments. Soldiers trying to talk suicidal crewmates out of airlocks. Scientists choosing to stay behind in doomed colonies so others could escape. The Talon agents couldn't look away. One by one, their suits began to malfunction, not externally. The neural interfaces inside began to show them things they had never seen, emotions they had never felt. They fell to their knees. Lorraine wept uncontrollably. Soren screamed. One tried to fire his weapon, only to find it gone. Not disassembled. Not stolen. Just absent. As if it had never existed. Valen arrives. Captain Valen, informed of the intrusion days before it even occurred, arrived silently aboard the Terran vessel Echo and Stone. The station's AI, an ancient program named Sable, briefed her as the Talon agents were escorted into containment chambers. "They are broken," Sable said, her tone neutral. "But not beyond repair." Valen regarded the Zarthari with a heavy expression. "Why let them in? They needed to see. They still do." Valen entered the observation room. The Zarthari didn't rise. Didn't threaten. "Why didn't you kill us?" asked Soren weakly. "Because extinction isn't something we wish on others," Valen replied. "We've seen what it does. To culture. To hope. To children." Soren stared at her, something between shame and confusion flooding his face. "You could have stopped us before we came," Lorraine whispered. "We did. You just didn't listen." Return of the Broken. 3 weeks later, a lone Zarthari scout ship limped back to the Empire's border. Aboard it were Soren and Lorraine, the only 2 coherent survivors of the silent Talon. When they were debriefed, their reports were classified immediately. The reason? Their conclusions didn't match any accepted military logic. Humans are not strong because of weapons, Soren said. They are strong because they learn to endure things no species should ever have to. And they chose not to become monsters afterward. You misunderstand, a Zarthari general barked. They toy with us. Their silence is arrogance. No, Loreen whispered. Their silence is mercy. Cultural revelation. What followed was a schism in the Empire. Some factions doubled down, demanding total war, refusing to believe in psychological trickery. Others began to question the foundations of their ideology: conquest as destiny, fear as power. One younger strategist, Kairos Vel, summed it up at a clandestine symposium. If strength is domination, then how do the humans dominate without violence? If weakness is empathy, why do the Terrans survive when all others break? Either our definitions are wrong, or everything we've built is. He was silenced. But his words spread. Humanity watches. In the dark, behind cloaked satellites and sensor-shielded observatories, humanity watched. Captain Valen stood again in the same observation deck as before, beside historian Elia Rowe. You let them in on purpose, Elia said. We had to, Valen replied. Sometimes, fear only teaches anger. But understanding teaches change. And if they don't change? Valen turned away from the stars. Her voice was calm. Then we remind them. Again. The tipping point. The Zarthari Empire, wounded and humiliated, reached a crossroads. The Silent Talon's failed infiltration was a scandal buried in classified archives. Whispers of human endurance and psychological dominance spread through underground circles, across military academies, even among younger nobles who had never seen war outside simulations. But the ruling caste saw only one path forward: demonstration of force. In the eyes of the Emperor and his high command, humanity's restraint was a bluff, a trick. A civilization that powerful must be hiding weakness. Something to exploit. Something to expose. They launched Operation Divine Hammer. 6 capital-class dreadships, cloaked and reinforced, were ordered to cross the Terran border and probe strategic military targets. No contact. No diplomacy. Just a warning: Zarthari dominance will not be denied. And that was mistake number 3. A border like no other. The dreadships moved with precision, skimming past sensor buoys and pulse satellites. Their engineers were confident, their stealth tech unmatched by any other galactic power. Until the lead ship, Vengeance Unbound, blinked out of existence. Not exploded. Not disabled. Just gone. Admiral Telex aboard the second ship barked orders. Emergency dispersal. Scan the entire quantum band. But the scans returned nothing. Space itself around them twisted slightly, as if watching. The fleet initiated retreat maneuvers. Then the stars changed. A Terran anomaly field bloomed across the sector. A silent sphere of altered gravity, time, and magnetism, mapped by no one, predicted by nothing. The fleet's navigational computers began cycling impossibilities. One by one, systems shut down, not from external interference, but internal surrender. Inside the wrath of sky, power died entirely. Screens went black. Lights dimmed. Then a message appeared, printed in every Zarthari language ever known. You were warned. Enter the Leviathan. They saw it before they heard it. A single Terran ship emerged, colossal, obsidian, and silently drifting. Not military, not sleek. It looked like it was carved from a black hole and wrapped in starlight. Its name was simple: Leviathan. The Terran ship didn't power weapons. It didn't even send a transmission. Instead, their minds were filled. A directed psionic pulse, not painful, not damaging, just clarifying. Suddenly, the Zarthari crew understood what the humans had always known. The cost of war isn't measured in blood. It's measured in memory. And then they saw it, visions of Earth's history projected across space, visible in the void like a dream. Children hiding in bombed-out shelters during the Third Global Conflict. Colonists losing oxygen one breath at a time on Europa. A mother, terminally ill, sending her final message to her child light years away. A soldier holding the hand of a dying alien, not knowing if they were friend or foe, but refusing to let them die alone. The Zarthari command crews broke. Some wept openly. Some screamed for orders that wouldn't come. One entire ship surrendered without being hailed. The broadcast. Back on Earth, President Maya Elson stood before the United Terran Assembly, the holofeed transmitted live across neutral and enemy channels. Behind her stood generals, ambassadors, engineers, scientists, every face a different ethnicity, age, and origin. Her tone was calm. Not proud. Not angry. Just resolute. We never asked for this conflict. We sent envoys. We opened trade. We showed restraint. You saw our silence as fear. You saw our peace as weakness. She paused. But we weren't silent because we were afraid. We were silent because we remember. The hologram behind her showed Earth, scarred and healing, surrounded by space stations and green colonies. We remember what we had to do to survive. What we lost. Who we became. She leaned forward. And we will not let you drag us back into the darkness we escaped. You've touched our border. Now you'll learn why no one crosses it. The last mistake. Back in Zarthari space, the High Command ordered a retaliatory strike. A desperate act. A last-ditch show of strength. They armed a planet-killer weapon, a sun-piercer, designed to destabilize stellar cores. Their target, Delta Horus, a Terran research outpost orbiting a binary star. The weapon launched. 3 hours later, it vanished. No explosion. No debris. Instead, every Zarthari homeworld received the same image, their weapon, floating in orbit around their own sun, neatly disassembled, each component labeled in Terran script. A final message followed. We don't need war to end you. But we'd rather help you than destroy you. The next move is yours. Reckoning within. The Zarthari populace erupted. Protests broke out across the core worlds. Scholars released forbidden studies comparing Zarthari and Terran philosophies. Young officers resigned en masse. Refugees from lesser species under Zarthari control began organizing resistance cells. And slowly, the truth emerged. Humanity didn't just survive their death world. They transcended it. They became what the galaxy feared most, not tyrants, not conquerors, but unbreakable. Empires were built on fear. Humanity had evolved past it. Zarthari command fractured. One admiral defected. A minor noble declared his territory a Terran-aligned protectorate. The old order crumbled under the weight of its own denial. The last conversation. In a secure diplomatic zone above the neutral planet Veltraxis, a final meeting took place. Captain Valen sat across from High Strategist Jexen Var, once proud, now humbled. She placed a single Terran data chip on the table. "What's this?" he asked, voice hoarse. "A map. Not of your space. Of ours." He blinked. "You're giving us coordinates?" "We're giving you a choice," Valen said. He hesitated. "Why help us now?" She looked him in the eye. "Because we remember what it was like to be desperate. And we'd rather have you as neighbors than ghosts." Jexen said nothing. But when he stood, he took the chip. Epilogue: Why no one dares. Years passed. The Zarthari Empire restructured. Not conquered. Not colonized. Inspired. Trade routes reopened. Peace treaties solidified. Joint research projects between former enemies flourished. The galaxy, once fractured by fear, began to stitch itself back together. But the human border? Still silent. Still unmoving. Still sacred. And still feared. Because now, everyone understood. Humanity didn't boast. Humanity didn't threaten. Humanity didn't retaliate without warning. But when it moved like extinction made flesh. A Terran proverb spread quietly across alien cultures, spoken in awe, sometimes in prayer, often in warning. You can poke a god and hear nothing. But if you hear a whisper in the silence, run. Because that god remembers. And gods who remember, don't forgive twice.